Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, beauties, to this gorgeous episode of The Secret Witch Show. It's going to be a magical one, and with that in mind, the word magic, the theme of magic, I am super excited to share with you our latest journey that is beginning in October. Now, this is your invitation. If you are feeling called to this episode and you love all things magic, but also simultaneously have this kind of love-hate relationship with magic. There's maybe a sense of like, can I really trust magic? Like, can I really trust my magic? There's probably this kind of like self-doubt piece that's coming in. And yet you're kind of like, yes, I am a secret witch, but also simultaneously feeling all the fear of fully expressing that witchiness into the world. Then this might be a journey that is going to excite you. So we are going to be journeying in October with Archetypal Luna, and Luna being, of course, the moon, which is perfect for the episode that we are diving into today. So, if you want to find out a little bit more about that journey, please do feel free to reach out, or you can find out more at nicolebarton.co.uk/Luna. We've also, I believe, by the time this goes out, we'll have just done a taster event for Luna. So if you want a replay of that, then I would recommend just messaging me on socials and I can send you a copy personally. So just find me, Nicole Barton, on Facebook or Instagram. The links will be in the show notes, and I can send you a little link of the taster event. On The Secret Witch Show today, though, I'm exploring how women can connect with the power of the moon to reclaim our feminine magic and gifts. I explain a new magical way to harness the power of the moon. For those who maybe already work with the moon a little bit, this is kind of a new way. And that way is seeing Luna, or the moon, as a deep archetypal symbol or remedy that can help secret witches to overcome their fear and self-doubt of magic, helping women get in tune with the moon for deep, healing self-illumination. So in this episode, I also provide quite practical guidance on cultivating a relationship with the moon and deeper connection to your natural rhythms and cycles, helping you to face any resistance to embracing your inner magic and healing gifts. I also explore a little bit about ascension versus descension. If you're wondering what that is, then listen. And how you can begin to own your unique gifts and step confidently into your role as a healer. Let's dive in. Juicy one. Welcome back to The Secret Witch Show. And I am deeply excited today to be sharing how to work with the power of the moon to own our feminine magic and gifts. I absolutely love this episode because I think you'll probably likely be coming in with some kind of deep call to the moon and her magic. And I think ultimately the moon is a beautiful symbol that's kind of like obvious as an archetypal remedy, but I'm going to be talking more to that. I'm just kind of sinking into this episode before we dive deep into that. In essence, if you're listening to this, you're probably what I'd call a secret witch, who is not necessarily always a practicing witch, but is really a symbol of a powerful woman who is magical, who is feminine, who is powerful. And yet, at the same time, despite that being true, she will feel this deep call to magic, deep call of the heart and soul to something more meaningful, something like not unlike any other call that we felt before. And despite that, she will also feel terrified. There will be this kind of like real pull, this draw to feminine magic, to your gifts, and simultaneously this fear. And so what we're really feeling when we're in that kind of call to magic is a call to the ancient feminine, a call to our softness, a call to slowness, a call to our sensuality, a call to our wise woman, a call to our inner healer. And often what comes along with that is this kind of simultaneous deep call to the moon. So I do a lot of work with secret witches in our community and more widely around like new moon, full moon rituals. Like that's a big part of our practice in the Secret Witch Society, in the Secret Witch path, in the Archetypal Apothecary path. And there's this kind of deep call, this deep affinity, if you like, often with the moon. And there's a reason why. It's because the moon is a deep symbol of our feminine magic. I'm going to talk about why in a moment, but ultimately just know that if you're resonating with that, you've been called into listening to the Secret Witch show first and foremost. I mean, that tells you you're a secret witch, if nothing else. You probably wouldn't be here if you weren't feeling a call to all things magical. And simultaneously, all the fear is probably also coming in. The fear of our deeper soul call, particularly when we're talking about working with the moon, we start to feel this deep call to magic and we start to mistrust it. We doubt our call to magic. We doubt, do we have magic? Have we made this kind of deeper call to something more meaningful? Have we made it up? Like, is it real? Is it possible? There's a brilliant episode, if you haven't listened to it, with Dean Radin about is magic real? And that feels so healing for that part of you. But this episode is also going to be healing for that part of you as well. Because this episode, I always like to kind of serve a particular remedy in our episodes. And we talk about archetypal remedies. We can talk more about what that means. But in essence, we're serving in this episode the medicine of the moon. And that might not just be in the way that you have already come to work with her. So I suspect if you're here, you may have noticed this kind of affinity that you have with the moon. And yet also kind of wondering, like, why do I have this strange call to the moon? Perhaps. But maybe the way that you've been working with her is by kind of going into new moon or full moon rituals. And I think we want to kind of zoom out in this episode and see her symbolism, see her patterns, see what she's here to really illuminate for us. But firstly, often just when you're feeling this kind of sense of like mistrust in your magic, I just want you to know that this is really just a sign of you being a secret witch. And when we're in that, we can kind of start to think, oh, well, maybe I'm not cut out to be a healer. Maybe I'm not cut out to embrace my feminine gifts. And that's heartbreaking. Like, it's also where I've been, because I wouldn't be serving this path if it wasn't. But like, it's also heartbreakingly untrue. Like, it's not true that you're not cut out for it. And if you're feeling that call to the moon, then my invitation is to trust the synchronicity of what she's trying to illuminate for you. And I'm going to talk more about that. But in essence, it makes sense that we would feel this kind of mistrust of magic, that we're not cut out for it, that we don't have magic. It makes so much sense because in our culture, more widely, we are not taught that feminine magic, her natural rhythms, her capacity to be with the darkness and the emotions, like we're taught that isn't valuable. We're taught what I'd call quick fix magic that kind of plasters over our ears. That's kind of coming from the masculine lens, the lens that values logic, speed, lineality, like making things linear. Like, that is what we're taught in our culture is valuable. And even in the spiritual world, we're taught that we need to fix ourselves with these healing modalities, or to be more love and light, or like those sorts of like, we're just going to trust the universe. Like, and that lightness, that quickness, that kind of looking for a linear path is very much what I call sun energy. So we've got the moon and we've got the sun. And the sun energy, I've come to feel, is more like that masculine, like brightness. And yet the moon is more representative of the feminine, the darkness, the coming back to the body, the being in the natural rhythms of life. And so when we're talking about working with the power of the moon to own our feminine magic, we're not just talking about going into moon rituals. We're talking about working with the moon as an archetypal remedy, which is a very, very different way of working with her. And so many women who have begun to kind of walk this path of soul have often been, and this is very much my own journey, so I'm sharing more from my own experience. Like, I was very much in what I now have called like ascension, or seen her. It's not me that's called it that. It's this is spiritual teaching. I don't want to take ownership for that. But in essence, like the path that I was walking was one that is called ascension. And that's where many women have been. I know many of my one-to-one clients also express this, and people in groups as well, that in group work that I do. Like there's this sense of like handing over our power, rising up to spirit, and elevating out of our bodies, being like, oh, it's all just thought, it doesn't matter, like ascending, being in love and light. And this is very much the sun energy. It's like this ascending to the sun. And that's needed. Like we need to know that there's this greater plan, that there's something bigger than us. And often we need as well that masculine holding, particularly to be able to flow as feminine essence beings. And yet there's also a place beyond just being in that kind of light and that kind of harsh, logical, quick fix, kind of masculine way. There's a place beyond that Luna, or the moon, takes us to, or invites us to sink into, let's say, because I don't think she really takes us there. She just invites us tenderly. And this is what I'm talking about for Luna. She represents the feminine place. She represents that yin, that nighttime, the kind of opposite of the masculine, that kind of soul place. And so as I journeyed with ascension, and I taught ascension for a while when I was a healer, teaching that, like I started to, well, actually I got dragged into initiation with the feminine, which started to help me see that there's this kind of descension back to soul that is required for us to become healers. And I was actually just looking in my group and saw a message about like, I feel like I've got these kind of gifts. Like somebody was saying that, I've got the gifts of Reiki, or like I can't remember what other examples they gave, but like sound healing, or any of the acupuncture, or like whatever it is that your gift is, or just spiritual healing, like mediumship, whatever it is. Like we can feel like we have these gifts, and yet we don't have this kind of uniqueness about us, which can have us kind of like give up and think, oh, well, I don't have any unique magic. Like everybody else is doing magic. Everyone else is teaching Reiki, or, doing massage, or whatever it is. Like everyone can do that. And from an ascension place, it makes sense that it would look like there's no real magic or unique gifts in that. Because the uniqueness is found back in our bodies, our unique feminine bodies. I'm going to explain more what I mean about that, because it probably sounds quite an abstract theory, but essentially the moon invites us back into this descension to soul. It invites us to go into the darkness, into the mystery, and stand on the edge of the cliff, trusting alchemy and healing and alchemizing the wounds in our bodies into our unique gifts. It's almost like this kind of invitation back home within our bodies, into our rhythms, into our natural cycles, which the moon represents, into where our kind of soulful magic really resides, where we can own the unique expression of our gifts, of our magic, of our feminine. And that still might sound quite abstract, so I'm going to put it into context in terms of a quote that is quite popular. It's by Rumi, and it's the quote that says, "You aren't a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop." And I think this quote always perfectly sums up for me the difference between ascension and descension. So we're talking about the ocean. The ocean's the greater. This to me represents spirit, or the sun energy, that ascension piece. When we talk about the drop, we're talking about coming back down into the uniqueness, into soul. And so what we're really saying when we say you aren't a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop, is that we are a unique soul expression via the body of the universal greater spirit, of the sun, but with the moon, in the moon, in the body. And so, like, this is a really helpful concept to start to unpack as we start to think about owning our feminine magic and gifts as healers. And the moon, not just in a practical, tangible, ritualistic way, which we will talk to, but like from an archetypal lens, from holding up a mirror to see like which aspects of the moon have we been denying within ourselves. Like, this is how we're working with the moon in order to reclaim our magic and gifts. So I'm going to talk more about that. But in essence, one of the shadows of magic, of Luna, of the moon, is that we can almost like self-doubt. We can mistrust our feminine magic. We can think that we can't be healers. And I want to talk more about the moon as an archetypal remedy in a moment. So I think that'll become clearer when I do. But in essence, just to share before I do go there, like my point of view is that this isn't true. Like we don't need to doubt ourselves. We don't need to mistrust our feminine magic. And we can be healers. If we're feeling that call, it's likely we're here to be healers. We wouldn't feel the call at all otherwise. And so this isn't true that we have to doubt ourselves. My point of view is that it just means there's like a layer. I talk about surface layers in this path. There's a layer of like remedies to heal of your inner healer or your inner secret witch that is required to fully embrace your gifts and open to them. And so what we're being called into, if we resonate with the moon, but we mistrust our feminine magic, is we're being called into healing, what I would call the lunar remedy state. Like you've got some wounding around your feminine magic, but Luna is going to help you heal, is that in a nutshell. And we can kind of dismiss that. We can dismiss that when we are kind of like ascending, we end up dismissing the uniqueness in our bodies. We end up dismissing our feminine magic that's in our bodies, in our cells, in our rhythms, in our cycles. And it can feel this kind of relief, actually, to float around and be like, oh, cool, I'm just going to trust the universe. And most of us have been there. So I'm not like, I'm making fun, but I'm making fun of myself because this has also been a part of my journey. And it's nice to keep it light in some ways. And like, there is this kind of magic shadow pole that Luna has as part of her, where it will make it obvious as to why we prefer ascension. And essentially, like in ascending, we're kind of denying magic altogether. So this shadow pole, when I talk about a shadow pole, it's like ways that Luna expresses in her wounding. We're going quite deep here already, but in essence, like each archetypal remedy that we serve in this path has what I call a shadow pole, where it'll swing from one end to the other. And magic and Luna's remedy, in essence, her shadow pole is either denying magic altogether in bursts. I mean, we might be like, oh, magic, yeah, and then be like, no, shut that down. That's not logical. So there's this complete, like, on this end, like denying magic altogether, or blindly trusting magic and giving our power to the universe, like just blindly floating around in magic without really coming down into our body and like fully embodying magic. And that is what Luna helps us to do, which is needed to heal your healer. So the moon, in essence, helps us to access that descent to soul, to body, to our feminine magic, because our magic is in the body. And that's relevant whether we're a man or a woman. Like if you're masculine, then your masculine magic is also in the body. But I'm teaching from an embodied feminine experience because I'm always a big believer that we have to embody what we teach. And I am a woman in a female body. So I will always teach that. And in essence, Luna invites us to open to our possibility. She invites us to open to our magic, to our creative power as women. You know, to seeing that we will go through phases, we will have cycles, we will have rhythms, and that is welcome. That is part of the magic. And it's truly the alchemy of learning to trust the magic within us. This episode is really about working with the moon in a kind of unique way to help us reclaim what she symbolizes. And we can do that on a practical level. You know, embodiment is one of the 8 elements of my path. And so there is a very practical embodied journey that we can have with the moon, but I wouldn't say that that's the place to start. Because firstly, this episode isn't just directly aimed at the practical. We will go there. Like we'll go with that. I'm going to provide you some practical stuff, but it's about more deeply. And I think this is the real art of healing. Like it can become, if we just interact with ritual alone, a new moon and full moon ritual alone, it can almost become like a sticky plaster. It can become like that quick fix that has us kind of just, okay, we're going to engage in ritual and that's it, done, healed. We've released it, we've let it go. I see that come up a lot in our Secret Witch group as well, actually. And I guess the invitation is to, whenever we're engaging with a ritual, like to see what it reveals. And it's a very different way of working with remedies that if you're in my path, you'll start to come to understand, even just by listening to the podcast, like you'll start to get a feel for how these energetic remedies work. And there's no wrong making when I talk about quick fix either. It's not like the quick fix tools. What I mean by quick fix is the way that we interact with healing in general. Like we're conditioned that how we heal is by outsourcing to another person. So for example, we've got a headache, we go to the doctor, they give us tablets. And we've taken that same approach into magical healing, and yet magical healing is very different. It's about being in the mystery and seeing what is revealed. And that's really how these energetic archetypal remedies work. And so it's learning how to begin to trust that, because it is terrifying. It takes a lot of courage, a lot more courage than we're taught, to be able to go in and learn how to be a healer, a real, true magical healer, because the art of magic can be very scary in terms of like leaning in and seeing what's revealed. We want the logical. It makes sense that we want the logical. We've been conditioned into the logical, but magic is not logical. It's not linear. It's not something that we can just like make sense of always. And yet we do our best. So it's not aimed at the practical, because that in isolation would be dismissing this kind of integration piece. And it's very much around working with Luna and learning to work with these archetypal remedies energetically, and working with Luna as an archetypal remedy. Now, what I mean by that, if you have not listened to any of the rest of our show before, is that archetypal remedies are essentially energy medicine. There's a kind of combination of 3 ancient wisdom bodies woven into this path, which I'll just briefly define them, is homeopathy. So we work with like differently with combine these 3 things into a unique new way of working, but based in these ancient wisdom bodies. And the first one is homeopathy. Homeopathy is my lineage, and essentially they have remedies that have personality profiles. Now I started to see that these were actually like archetypes, archetypal remedies. So I was looking with archetypal psychology through that lens of like shadow and seeing how these homeopathic remedies had their own personalities. And then I realized that we can kind of work with those not only as personality profiles to learn more about ourselves, archetypal psychology being like almost like holding up the mirror so that we can reflect and see aspects of ourselves that have been lying unconscious, dismissed, denied, suppressed. Like, but also we can work with them as spirits. We can channel them. We can work with them energetically for energy healing. So the 3rd ancient wisdom body is archetypal healing. Homeopathy, archetypal psychology, and energy healing. That's the kind of foundations of archetypal remedies in our path. And so archetypal remedies are like energy medicine. They're kind of energy medicine that is a symbol that helps us with self-illumination, soul healing, personality profiles, and spirit guides. And we can call Luna's spirit in. We can hold up a lens and see what she reflects back to us. Like, what does she symbolize? That is an aspect of ourselves that we've maybe shoved away and shamed. You know, we're talking about the secret witch feeling like her magic isn't welcome. The mystery isn't welcome. The full expression of our emotions our femininity isn't welcome. And the moon to me represents all of those things, in terms of like, particularly with Luna, she's this symbol of the aspects of our soul that we want to reclaim. And similarly, like cures like. So often what can happen when we start to see that is we can feel some fear, because what causes symptoms will also cure symptoms. So what we fear will cure us. And so that's sometimes why when we think about being secret witches even, and we think about magic, we can start to feel that fear. But in particular with Luna, she's a symbol of feminine magic. She's a symbol of our deep feminine mystery, our capacity to reclaim the light in the darkness, to shine in the dark, to be okay in the dark, to be whole in the dark. She's a symbol of our connection to our rhythms, to our cycles. She's a symbol of alignment with soul. And the moon and her power has such an impact on the world. I'm going to say I always categorize the remedies into what I call archetypal queendoms. And the queendom that the moon is in is what was once called the imponderables, but is also now called the magical remedies. And the reason for that is because the moon cannot be explained. And yet she has such power. She impacts tides. She controls the tides. She controls our bodies. Like we're 70% water. But we can often overlook and undervalue this mystery because we think, oh, well, we don't understand it. We don't understand how the moon works. But we don't go, oh, the moon doesn't exist because we don't understand what she's doing. We don't understand how she's doing this. Like, how does she control the tides? I don't know. Well, therefore, she must not exist. Like, she just stands there and shines. And she is magical. She's not apologetic about it. She's just pure feminine magic. Mystery, just there, shining her light in the dark. And that's really what she helps us to reclaim. She's also cyclical. She's a symbol of our cycles, our rhythms, and how we can dismiss and disconnect from those. And so we work with her, first and foremost, not in the way to how we're traditionally taught through ritual, although we can work with her. It's a great embodiment of her when we're coming to embody our magic, which is slightly later. But first and foremost, we work with her as a symbol, as an energetic remedy for healing that reflects aspects of our soul that we want to reclaim, namely our magic, our feminine mystery. So how then to work with the power of the moon? That's what we're here to learn. Like, how can we work with the moon to reconnect ourselves and live a magical life where we own our gifts as healers? Well, firstly, we start to illuminate her patterns. We start to look at Luna and what she's revealing to us. So, firstly, what's she revealing about our connection to our rhythms and cycles? What's she revealing to us about our capacity to hold the feminine mystery? And all of that stuff that we've talked about, how our capacity to be with the dark, with the emotions, the still shine. Our capacity to not even care if we're being judged for the fact that people don't understand. Like the lunatic is what a woman who's a secret witch often fears being called. Like, oh, they're going to think I'm a lunatic if I'm off out doing my moon rituals. It's like, yeah, and the moon doesn't care about that. She just shines. And so, like, we start to begin as we start to illuminate these patterns that the moon offers us. We start to begin to own our gifts. We start to begin to see the patterns that are stopping us from owning our gifts, more importantly, said differently. And so the invitation as we start to work with the moon is to begin to love ourselves in the patterns that she's revealing. So loving ourselves in our avoidance of the darkness, loving ourselves in our, almost like wanting to hide our light in the darkness, loving ourselves in the disconnect we feel to our body, to our feminine rhythms, to our cycles, the fact that we've numbed ourselves to that. Like, loving ourselves in how we've disconnected from our feminine emotions, loving ourselves in how we have dismissed our magical intuition and dismissed our inner magic. And I've noticed so many women in our path, in our journeys, including myself, a version of me, and even, it still comes up for me, is that we have this deep resistance to the moon's magic because we've been conditioned that it's wrong. And we kind of want to be healers, but we think there should be an easier way. Like ascension's so much of a relief in comparison to walking the path of soul. And we avoid the darkness and the material for liberation that comes up. So, for example, like when we start to work with the moon, she might start to bring up what's called a healing response or material for liberation, showing us patterns, showing us things that we have to journey through as we initiate ourselves into our feminine magic. So we numb ourselves. We prioritize maybe more logical things, more mundane things, because we don't feel worthy of choosing our magic. So we may maybe then push, hustle, force instead of trusting. It's like, oh, let's reject this magic because it doesn't feel safe. Like, let's love the parts of us that don't feel safe in our magic. And maybe it feels selfish or indulgent to trust something that our bodies and hearts are calling us to. And we feel, as a result of that, we feel the call to being this magical healer. And then we think, am I really cut out for this? Am I really magical? Do I really have gifts? Who am I to think I have gifts? Who am I to think I have magic? And so we shut it down and we return to our mundane lives. And it's heartbreaking. And Luna is calling us to ask those questions. Where are we doing that? With love, with understanding of the innocence of it. Because we're just all little girls wanting to be loved. Wanting not to be shamed for our magic. And so, of course, we begin to work with the moon as an archetypal lens to see where we have dismissed those parts of ourselves, where we have shamed them, where we have not let them lead us deeper into our gifts. And it's archetypal Luna, or the moon, who offers us the healing for this, because we dismiss and fear her magic, and like cures like. She's here to reveal all of those things, all of those patterns. And the invitation from her is to begin to go into self-illumination with the moon as an energetic symbol or remedy. So the questions, and it might be good to pause this episode if you want to go into these questions, maybe grab a journal. And on a very basic level, we go way, way deeper in our group journeys on this, by the way, but I just wanted to offer something particular for those of you who are listening, like to get started on this. Like ultimately, there's 3 questions that I'm going to ask you. And I think it would be great to share just pause this, go into each of these questions in a deep way. And maybe if you do feel aligned to share, I didn't mean to say share earlier, but if it does feel aligned to share, I'm going to trust the magic of that. Like, please do come into our Secret Witch Society and join us and share what came up for you. So the first question is, what does the moon represent for you? Because I've given you my version of what Luna means, but I'm always an advocate of women really feeling into their bodies and tuning into, like, what does this look like for me? What does this feel like for me? What is she a symbol of? So be with that one. The second question is, which aspects of the moon have you dismissed within you? So when you've thought about question 1 and what she symbolizes, what then of that have you dismissed within you? Have you shamed within you? Have you made not okay? Have you made wrong? Like, this isn't acceptable in society. This isn't going to keep me safe. This is going to have me fail. The 3 fears, security, control, approval of the healer, the aspiring healer, will show up within this question. Like, why they're stopping and suppressing us from owning our magic, owning what the moon represents. And coming to the third question, I'm giving you a little bit of a hint for that, but the deeper question is why? Like, why have we dismissed those parts of ourselves, parts of our souls that are longing to be seen, feminine magic, or whatever the moon represents for you? Like, what is the deeper reason, the underlying reason? So maybe something surface comes up first and you go, okay, what's deeper than that? Like, what's the fear that's beyond that? Like, keep digging down, keep drilling down. What's the deeper reason we've dismissed this aspect of ourselves? So it's the third question. And as you journey with that, it begins to provide us information. It's working with the moon in a very different way. It gives us information on where we've learned to shame and self-doubt our feminine magic, the lunar that's already within us and is operating from shadow, pushing that magic to the side. Like, there's no getting away. If you're listening to this, you're resonating, like, Luna is within you. There's no getting away from that. It's just that she's being expressed from shadow, shame, self-doubt. So she's being suppressed rather than expressed. Or she's being expressed in a wounded way, let's say. And as you do that, we can also begin to work with the moon, and practically in an embodied way. I'd say the self-illumination, the opening, kind of comes first as a first step into reconnecting to these aspects of ourselves. And so if you're just beginning, I'm going to give two options for a way that you can then begin to work with the moon and see what more is revealed. Because ultimately, the more we start to connect with the moon, the more she's going to reveal to us as well. So if we're just starting this inquiry and we begin to stick with that inquiry and kind of living into it as we move throughout life, and this is what I say, we often think we have to set a chunk of time and be like, okay, now I'm going to be in the work. It's like, no, we're always in the work. Like, let's just be in the work ongoing. And sometimes there might be a good opportunity to do some integration, of course, but let's just notice through life what is coming up. And so if you are just beginning with this, go into the inquiries first and foremost. But if you want to start to connect more deeply to the moon and start to cultivate a relationship with her, which might sound strange, and again, probably will be like ruffling some feathers at your edge of like, okay, well, I'm going to go out and connect with the moon and people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm a lunatic. Like, notice that. And I'll talk more about noticing what comes up in this invitation. But the simplest invitation that I can offer you for how to begin to work with the power of the moon to own your feminine magic and gifts is to cultivate a relationship with her and her rhythms and cycles. Now, that might look like just going outside at the different phases of the moon, or even like daily and just looking up at the moon and seeing what phase she's in, just beginning to go out and speak to the moon. Maybe you do this particularly at new moon or full moon. Perhaps you join one of our free Manifesting with the Moon new moon healing circles, or subscribe to our newsletter for the full moon ritual that you can engage with. You can see how important Luna is in the path of becoming a healer. Like, she's woven in, she's embedded into the path. Like, maybe you start just there. Maybe you just simply go outside and notice and connect to her. Ask for her guidance. She's a spirit guide. And notice her magical signs and synchronicities. We often write these off. We start to mistrust them. So keep a diary. Keep a diary of what you're noticing as you go out and connect with the moon. Don't write off the small, tiny little seeds or nuggets or nudges or breadcrumbs of what's offered by the moon as you go into this practice. Noticing still, like, what does she represent? Just being with her, seeing what's revealed. If you want to go a little bit deeper, and you want to do that daily, because for some of you that might feel too much of an edge, so you might just start off with going out at new moon and full moon, and that's welcome. But like, if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can start to witness the influences of the moon and her similar seasons in your body. This is bringing it into the body, into the feminine body, and starting to see, like, how does my feminine body actually respond to Mother Nature's rhythms and cycles? How do I respond to the moon? Are there changes, cycles in my own body that map the moon's journey? And you'll start to see how much closer you are to nature, to the moon, as a feminine essence being, because we're so disconnected from our cycles and rhythms in our culture. So this is really potent inquiry, and don't underestimate it. But in essence, just to give you a little bit of an overview, spring is like waxing moon, and this is when the moon is starting afresh and it's kind of getting larger in the sky, moving from new moon towards full moon. Summer is full moon. This is the kind of time of the moon being like silvery full in the sky. Like it's the time when we're like really like, in our summer. And again, that might make no sense. Like these seasons might make no sense to you, in which case it's absolutely fine. But see how you feel. See how these land in your body. Autumn, waning moon. This is when the moon is kind of decreasing in size, moving from full moon to new moon. And then winter, dark moon. Just before the new moon, when the moon is directly between the earth and the sun and therefore hidden, leaving the sky in darkness, that wintry season, darkness. And just start to notice with those seasons, like each day, like capture which part of the moon's cycle you're in and which of the 4 seasons you're in, and one line or word describing how you feel, both emotions and physical sensations. This is something I invite women into all the time. It's so, so powerful if we choose to engage with it fully. And again, keep a diary of your body in relation to the moon cycle. Where do you notice changes with the moon's phases in your body? Now, the other piece of this, and perhaps arguably the most important piece of this, is not actually even in the actual practices themselves. If you're listening to this and like, cool, this sounds good, I'm going to do it. And then you come to it and you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to do it today because of X, Y, Z. Like, notice where you've resistance. Maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh no, that sounds like too much hard work. Like you've just got instant resistance. Like, oh, this is stupid. This is, magic isn't real. I'm not going to notice anything. Just notice with love where you have resistance to these practices. This is where the gold is. Even the practices themselves are half the time so much less illuminating and healing than it is just noticing the resistance to the practices. Like if you're noticing resistance, you aren't doing this right. And notice, like, are you disengaging because it feels like hard work? That's information. It's information about your magic. Are you resisting because you're putting feminine magic to the bottom of the pile because it's not provable or valued in our society? There's information about your feminine magic in that. But you're putting it last because of the fear of what others will think. Will they call me a lunatic if I'm outside doing moon rituals? Again, there's information in that. Notice what that information is. Like, are you fearing that feminine magic will make you a failure? That you can't trust it, you can't trust yourself, you're doubting yourself and the signs and synchronicities you've been feeling in your body? Notice it. That's information. It's information about where you are not owning or disowning your feminine magic and your gifts. It's telling you where the healing is, what's coming up for you. So I'm going to leave it there. And it feels like a gorgeous invitation, initiation into working with the power of the moon to own your feminine magic and gifts. So what I will say before I complete, though, is the invitation I've just provided you is not to be underestimated. Like, it's a big, big opening. And the invitation is to take baby steps as you're opening to this. Like, this is a way deeper journey. Like, reclaiming our feminine magic is a way deeper journey than just this practice. But the invitation is to just really take your own time, take your own pace. We're going to be running a lunar journey in October. And so if you are wanting to kind of deepen with the moon and Luna's magic and reclaiming, in essence, your own feminine magic and learning to heal your self-doubt, then it might be something that you'd like to consider going deeper into integration with. But for now, like, just open to what's here. Going into that inquiry is so potent. Please do not underestimate the inquiry, the 3 points that I gave you for the inquiry, but also like just noticing where you have resistance. There's so much like perception. If I was going to say anything, like, there's so much perception out there that becoming a healer should be easy, that even healing ourselves should be easy. And again, that ascension path kind of offers that false hope that it will be easy. And as we come to begin to be initiated into soul. For some of you who maybe have been called into that initiation, often some of us, we don't even have a choice. Like, it gets to the point where soul's been calling to us for so long and being ignored for so long that she will literally just rip through our lives and tear them apart, like through illness, through relationship breakdowns, through birth, through, trauma. There's certain things that they're almost like, we call them initiations. I often call them initiations. Like, we have these initiations and the invitation is into soul. Like, they call us down back into the body, and that is never going to feel easy. We are going to be faced with darkness. If there's one thing I want to do, it's to not sugarcoat that the journey of becoming a healer is not easy. Because it's so missold. It's missold as being something that's simple. It's missold as like quick fix, kind of like, come earn 6 figures from being a healer. It isn't that easy. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous to say, like when I'm like inviting women into learning to be a healer. But the point is that integrity is so important. Like, and that's something also that I've been really feeling. Like, people start to intuit, people start to discern. Like, and that's filling my heart, because there's so much out there that's like, come do this, it's really easy. Like, go and get your Reiki certificate and straight away you're a healer. And it's just, there's like a whole journey of becoming. There's a journey of becoming a healer that we can take at our own pace. There's no rush. Rushing is just coming back to the masculine, coming back to the pushing, forcing, hustle. And that's really what we've all been wanting to get away from, because it's not what our feminine bodies were built for. Our feminine bodies were built to flow, to be in harmony with our rhythms, with our nature, with the moon. And so this is a deep, deep initiation. This is a deep opening, which we can take at our own tender pace. Like, we don't need to heal all of this at once. The opening is in just beginning to notice where you might resonate with the themes that we've talked about today. Yeah. Gorgeous. That feels really juicy. So I'm going to leave it there. And please do, if you want to share in our Secret Witch group, please do join our Secret Witch Society and share what you've learned in today's episode. I would love that. And yeah, otherwise, I will see you in the next episode. Lots of love. I loved that episode, and here are my key takeaways. So many magical women fear the deep fear of their inner magic, and mostly struggling with doubting ourselves, feeling disconnected from our feminine bodies, magic and unique gifts. And many women also feel the deep and symbolic call to the moon, but perhaps don't realise that there is more to her magic than meets the eye. Luna is an archetypal symbol that helps us to reclaim our feminine magic, mystery, and stop doubting our healing gifts. The moon represents an archetypal remedy with deep feminine attributes such as slowness, sensuality, wisdom, and the capacity to be with darkness and our emotions. Connecting with Luna's rhythms and cycles can help us attune to our own feminine body's natural cycles, something which many secret witches are disconnected from in our mundane, logical, head-driven society. Moon ritual is a powerful way to embody our magic, and there are practical invitations in this episode to help you get started with working with the moon. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.